Zenaida Ravanera. I'm the Associate Director of the Population Change and Life Course Cluster, which is a partner of the P2P. And I'm also an adjunct research professor at the Center for Population, Aging and Health at University of Western Ontario. I was told that I have 15 minutes, so not 10 minutes. I prepared for that, and what I'm hoping is that you will find my presentation so interesting that you wouldn't notice that I have exceeded my 15 minutes. Okay, so this presentation is based on a paper co-authored with Vicky SS and Fernando Rajulton, and was first presented in an international population conference in Busan, Korea in August. I start with an introduction that defines integration and the general framework of analysis used. I will then end with my presentation with remarks on the analysis of integration in a wider context of social cohesion. But the main focus of my presentation are illustrations of two indices, welcomeability and integration, and for both, I will discuss a framework of analysis, data and methods, and results. So, integration. Integration is a multi-level and multi-dimensional concept that is widely used and defined in several ways. Integration can be applied to all individuals, but it is often used with reference to immigrants in receiving country. While integration is defined as an individual trait, it is often used as a characteristic of a society. For example, some authors say that the term social cohesion has become widely used as an equivalent for integration as a characteristic of society. For conceptual clarity, we distinguish integration from social cohesion. Integration is a characteristic of individuals, while social cohesion is characteristic of communities or societies. And social cohesion is a term encompassing a broader scope, and thus in our paper, we use the term welcomeability, referring to the characteristics of communities that enables them to welcome and integrate newcomers. We like this definition of immigrant integration, a process through which newcomers become capable of participating in the economic, social, and civic political life of the receiving country. This definition explicitly includes the domains in which immigrants are expected to participate. James Coleman, a mathematical sociologist, proposed a framework ideally suited for developing theories of social behavior at the macro and micro levels and their interrelations between them. This figure illustrates the application of this general framework to analysis of integration, distinguishing between welcomeability and integration and the community and individual levels of analysis. Here, arrow 1 indicates that certain community characteristics could lead to that community's ability to welcome immigrants, or welcomeability. And arrow 2, that individual level traits influence an individual's ability to fully participate in society or integration. While community characteristics do influence immigrant integration, that is arrow 3, we do not formally explore community effects on integration due to lack of appropriate data. Likewise, we have not included in our analysis of how integration of immigrants influence the ability of communities to welcome newcomers, shown as arrow 4. But I will refer to these relationships towards the end of the presentation. I now move on to discuss welcomeability. Using as guideline the 2010 study of SS and colleagues, Characteristic of Welcoming Community, this framework expands on the macro to macro relationship, that is, the community conditions and characteristics that could influence the abilities of communities to welcome and integrate. The characteristics in box A represents opportunities and facilities grouped into 3 domains: economic, social, and political. The economic domain includes opportunities and facilities for employment, housing, education, healthcare, and transportation. For social domain, opportunities to foster social capital, social engagement, and positive attitude towards immigrants, and for political domain, opportunities for political engagement and participation. In Box B are city features and that promote the use of the opportunities and facilities of immigrants. Items in Box B could be potentially considered as a bridge between the macro and micro conditions. So, to illustrate the development of welcomeability index, we use the outcome of a research commissioned by Citizenship and Immigration Canada to gather baseline data on Ontario communities that have established local immigration partnerships. We included data for all of the LIPs in Ontario, though we excluded data for the whole of Ontario, but included data for 15 LIPs in Toronto. While the framework of analysis requires data on opportunities and facilities available in the communities, no such data comparable across LIPs are available. We found that the best sources of data were the 2006 census and the 2008 Canadian Community Health Survey, as they have data for LIPs and have information that could be used as indirect indicators of those opportunities and facilities. From these several indicators available, we selected 18 for exploratory and confirmatory factor analysis, also known as structural equations modeling, to examine the existence of the relationships among theoretically established latent constructs from the available indicators. This table lists all the indicators initially considered in the exploratory factor analysis and those finally selected through the structural equations models. So we had economic, social, and health. There were no indicators in the political domain from both the census and the Canadian Community Health Survey. However, there were several variables on health, and thus we included a health domain, which in the earlier figure is listed under the economic domain. For the analysis at the community level, we therefore have used the two domains suggested in the framework, economic and social, and added a health domain. This path diagram shows the domains economic, social, and health, and the indicators that are related to the domains. I will not discuss this diagram in detail. The relationships identified by the structural equations model are used to estimate latent scores for each domain. So we have to obtain a welcomeability index, but to obtain a welcomeability index, that is a score that combines all three domain scores, we transformed the ranks into common distribution to make sure that we are combining apples with apples and not apples with oranges. To combine the domain scores, we use the weights of 50% for economic, 25% for each for the social and health domains. Obviously, assigning different weights would produce different results. Our paper presents the scores for each domain and all the overall welcomeability index as well as their ranks. In this presentation, I will show the patterns in the ranks and welcomeability using maps of Ontario and Toronto. To detect patterns in the ranks of welcomeability, we indicated the ranks with colors. Green for communities in the first 5 in welcomeability, light blue for the next 10, that is 6 to the 15th rank, red for the 16th to the 25th, purple for the 26th to the 35th, and dark blue for the 36th and the 45th, the last 10 in welcomeability. As you can see there, York, Peel, and Durham are in the 5 most welcoming communities. In general, welcomeability of Ontario LIP communities seems to radiate, from these core places. Among the next 10 in rank, for example, are areas adjacent to Peel in the west, namely Halton, Hamilton, Guelph, Wellington, and Waterloo, and Simcoe County that is adjacent to York. The exceptions are Windsor and Ottawa, with ranks that are quite high, 9th and 11th, though located in the opposite ends of southern Ontario. You'll notice those blue, light blue, 11th and 9th. The radiating pattern continues in Western Ontario, with Grand Erie, Niagara, Sarnia-Lambton, and London Middlesex being close in rank to the earlier named communities. Communities in Northern Ontario are, in general, in the lower third of the overall ranking. Northwestern Ontario is 38th, Sault Ste. Marie is 41st, and Timmins 44th, mainly due to their low ranks in social domain. North Bay, at 25th, is in the mid-rank, and Greater Sudbury and Thunder Bay not too far behind. Oh, I've got 3 minutes, and I still have one more. Okay. So North York is in Toronto, which is adjacent to York Region, and North Etobicoke, adjacent to the Peel Region, are third and fifth most welcoming communities. The downtown areas, east and west, and the areas to its north, Lawrence Heights and Bathurst Finns, seem to be the least welcoming. These communities rank high in the social and health domains, but have low ranks in the economic domain, in contrast to the Northern Ontario communities. A word of caution is in order. These ranks are mainly based on data that were available to us, and these data are only rough approximations of the realities that we aim to measure, which are the opportunities and facilities in each domain. A limitation that is most apparent is the lack of data on political domain, especially in participation and engagement in organization in the communities. While the ability of communities to welcome newcomers is of particular interest, the ultimate outcome sought for is the integration of immigrants. It is possible that communities may be seen as welcoming, and yet immigrants may not actually be integrated as desired. Thus, we take the further step of making an analysis at the individual or micro level. This framework expands the micro to micro relationship. Okay, I will just move on to the data. To derive an integration index for individuals, we make use of data from the Canadian General Social Survey on Social Networks conducted by Statistics Canada in 2008. So the survey included 15 years and older, but we focused on the residents in Ontario aged 30 to 64 of about 5,000. The indicators we use for the dimensions have a value of 1 if the respondent possesses the condition. Otherwise, the variable takes on the value of 0. To obtain an integration score for each individual, we assign weights to each of the dimensions. We assign a weight of 50% for the economic domain, 25 each for the social and the political domain. We also assume that the substantial dimensions, the ones lower, in the lower row, have heavier weight than the formal dimensions. Having obtained an integration score for each individual, we computed the average for population subgroups that are of interest to us. For example, we found that on the average, and as expected, immigrants have lower integration scores than non-immigrants. This table shows the average integration only for immigrants and how they differ by gender, ethnicity, and area of residence. I will just go directly to the last one. If there were sufficient number of respondents in its LIP community, its geographic information and on their information on their residents, we would have been able to obtain mean integration scores for the LIP communities. Here, the most that we could do is to obtain mean integration scores for urban and rural areas. Interestingly, immigrants are as integrated in the rural as they are in the urban, largely due to their stronger social and political integration, which counters their weaker economic integration. So this table shows the average scores for non-immigrants, but I will skip this. And then I go immediately to my concluding remarks. So the usefulness of welcomability and integration indices go beyond the ranking and detecting of differences by subgroups. Both indices or scores could be useful for further analysis. For example, if data were available, we could use the derived scores to examine the influence of community characteristics on the immigrants through multi-level techniques of analysis, that is, arrow 3. This would be the type of analysis that could examine whether initiatives such as local immigration partnerships and settlement services are the bridges that connect the various opportunities in the communities, that is the macro, to the newcomers or the micro level. Thus, a comprehensive macro-micro analysis of integration of immigrants would require for each community information on opportunities and facilities, how well individuals are doing in the various domains, and data on initiatives for immigrants being undertaken in the communities. Finally, immigration is seen and is often justified as making contribution to the receiving society. Thus, integration of immigrants has to be seen in the context of a broader societal goal such as social cohesion. This framework could be expanded to bring into the picture not only immigrants, but also non-immigrants. Welcomeability could be a community characteristic that contributes to social cohesion. That's the arrow 5. The micro-level conditions or characteristics now include both immigrants and non-immigrants. Look at arrow 6. And the bridge, arrow 7, represents the assumption that welcomeability benefits not only newcomers, but also the settled individuals in the communities. Finally, arrow 8 indicates that the integration of immigrants and non-immigrants contribute to social cohesion. For example, one could hypothesize that immigrants and non-immigrants who are well integrated are also more likely to engage in networking with each other, which in turn contributes to the community's social cohesion. An empirical study that tests all this relationship here would be comprehensive and huge and may not be possible with the data currently available to us. But the schema could be useful in other ways, say in planning for data collection. For example, this shows that a survey would have greater utility if both immigrants and non-immigrants are included as respondents. Another use for the framework is that it could locate within one schema the various studies that may be possible to do when data are available. So thank you. And that's my contact information. And if you want to download the paper, it's a discussion paper series of the Population Change and Life Course cluster in that website. Thank you.